The church smelled faintly of lilies and old stone. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows in fractured colors that danced across the pews. But none of it could warm me. At the front, my husband, Charles, lay in his coffin, polished to a gleam, surrounded by flowers that seemed too vibrant, too alive for a day drenched in grief. I sat in the front pew of the Catholic Church in downtown Los Angeles, my hands trembling in my lap. Behind me, I heard the whispers of my children, voices I had once found so precious, now sharp as broken glass. Finally, my daughter, Rebecca, murmured, "It's over. We can move on with our lives." My son Michael chuckled in reply, the sound low and careless. "Yeah, about time." I flinched, unable to turn around. They were my children, my flesh and blood. But in that moment, they felt like strangers. My eyes closed, and in the darkness, I saw Charles, as he had been in his last days, tired but smiling, squeezing my hand with a quiet strength that had carried me through so much. "Trust me, Ellie," he had whispered. "Everything will be all right." But nothing felt all right. When the service ended, people filed past, offering condolences that slid past me like smoke. I moved stiffly, following the attorney, Mr. Harris, into a small adjoining room. Rebecca and Michael were already seated, perched like vultures, eyes bright with hunger, not grief. Mr. Harris cleared his throat, unfolded the will, and began to read. His voice was dry, formal, each word landing like a blade. "To my beloved children, Rebecca and Michael, I leave the sum of $9 million, to be divided equally between them, as well as the 2 new vehicles purchased last year." Rebecca gasped in delight. Michael let out a laugh of triumph. My stomach sank. Harris paused, adjusted his glasses, and continued. "To my wife, Eleanor Whitfield, my dearest companion of 42 years, I leave this letter." He placed a sealed envelope in my hands. For a brief moment, silence stretched in the room. Then my children erupted into laughter. "A letter?" Rebecca sneered. "That's all you get?" Michael leaned back, smirking. "Guess Dad thought you had enough already." Looks like we're the ones who matter now. Their laughter was merciless, echoing against the walls. I lowered my gaze to the envelope. Charles' handwriting curled across it, steady, deliberate. My fingers traced the seal, and for the first time since his death, I felt something stir inside me. Not despair, not defeat, something deeper, quieter, hope. The house was silent when I returned that evening, the kind of silence that pressed in on you, heavy and unyielding. My Spanish villa in Pasadena had once been alive with Charles' voice, his footsteps echoing down the tiled hallway, his soft humming when he worked in his study. Now it felt cavernous, every sound of the creaking wood or distant traffic reminding me that he was gone. I sat at the kitchen table with only a single lamp burning, the envelope lying in front of me. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a folded sheet of thick paper, covered in Charles' familiar, meticulous script. "My love, it began. By now, you will have endured the cruelty of our children's laughter. I never intended to wound you, but I knew they would reveal their true hearts only when they believed you had nothing. They think they have won, but what they hold is a shadow. What is real, I have left to you." Tears blurred the words as I pressed the letter to my lips. He had known. He had known they would treat me this way. "You will find within this envelope a key," Charles had written. "It belongs to a safe deposit box at the Wilshire Grand Bank in Los Angeles. Inside are the things I could not trust them with. They belong to you alone. Guard them well. Do not tell anyone. Do not let them take this from you. Trust yourself as I have trusted you. I unfolded the paper further, and a small metallic clink fell into my palm. A brass key, tiny yet weighty, its number etched faintly along the stem. I closed my fingers around it, afraid it might vanish if I let go. For a long time, I sat there, staring at the key, my mind spiraling with questions. What could possibly be inside? Money, deeds, documents, something Charles hadn't wanted Michael and Rebecca to touch. I thought of Rebecca's sneer at the will, reading. The way Michael had leaned back in his chair, triumphant, as though I had been dismissed from my own life. For years, I had endured their dismissive words, their cold shoulders, their choices made without me. But today, their laughter had stripped away the last of my excuses. And Charles dear, patient Charles had seen it all. I slipped the letter and the key back into the envelope and carried it upstairs. Sliding open the nightstand drawer, I tucked them beneath a stack of silk scarves, hidden from any wandering eyes. That night, I barely slept. Each shadow on the wall looked like a threat, each sound outside like footsteps on the path. Yet beneath my fear was something sharper, resolve. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank. Tomorrow, I would learn what Charles had truly left me. The morning air was cool and brittle, the kind of Los Angeles morning where the marine layer still clung faintly to the hills before the sun burned it away. I drove down into the city, my coat pulled tightly around me, the brass key in my purse knocking softly with each bump in the road, like a secret whisper reminding me of what was at stake. Wilshire Grand Bank stood tall and gleaming, its glass doors reflecting the rush of commuters streaming past. My heart pounded so loudly it seemed everyone must hear it. Inside, the lobby was hushed, carpet thick underfoot, polished marble stretching upward. I approached the teller, a young woman with careful eyes. When I handed her the key, she studied the number, then offered me a polite nod. "One moment, ma'am." She led me to a small private room with pale walls and a long wooden table. "Please wait here," she said softly before disappearing into the vault. I clasped my hands together to stop them shaking. The silence pressed in, thick with anticipation. When the door opened again, the teller returned carrying a long, narrow steel box. She placed it in front of me, nodded once, and left me alone. My fingers hovered above the lid. I thought of Charles, his quiet strength, his meticulous planning, the way his hand had lingered on mine when he whispered, "Trust me." With a deep breath, I turned the key and lifted the lid. Inside lay no jewelry, no stacks of dollar bills as I had half expected. Instead, neat folders bound with twine filled the box. Atop them sat a thick leather-bound journal, worn at the edges, and a sealed envelope marked in Charles' unmistakable handwriting for my wife's eyes only. My pulse quickened. I tore open the envelope. "My dearest," Charles had written, "what you see here are the records of my real estate holdings, investment accounts, and business shares. These assets were not included in the official will. They are hidden in trusts and accounts known only to me and Mr. Lavs. Harris. Their value is greater than the $9 million given to the children. Much greater. I leave all of this to you because I know you will protect it, and you will honor what we built together." My hand flew to my mouth. Greater than $9 million. The children had strutted out of the will, reading like conquerors. But they had been handed scraps. Here, before me, lay the true weight of Charles' legacy. I opened the journal next. Page after page in his hand, entries filled with disappointment in our children, with love for me, with fear I would be left alone against them. "This is why I chose this path," he had written, "not to punish them, but to reveal them, and to give you the power to decide what comes next." Tears streamed down my face as I gathered the files and journal back into the box. It felt heavy in my arms, not just with paper, but with the burden of truth. When I returned home, I carried it upstairs and placed the documents in an old cedar trunk in my bedroom closet, under folded blankets. Hidden. Protected. But even as I closed the lid, a seed of fear took root. Because now, I understood the children's laughter was nothing compared to what would come when they realized what their father had truly done. The first few days after visiting the bank, I walked through the house with a constant tightness in my chest. The trunk in my closet seemed to hum with hidden energy, as though the weight of Charles' secrets pressed against the wood. I told myself no one knew, that the children were too busy enjoying their sudden fortune to notice me. But I underestimated their hunger. Rebecca arrived first, unannounced, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor of my Pasadena villa. She swept into the kitchen, carrying shopping bags from Rodeo Drive, her diamond earrings catching the morning light. "You should see the new place I am looking at in Malibu," she said airily, dropping into a chair. "Oceanfront. Perfect for entertaining. You'll have to visit, Mom, though I doubt you'd care for the upkeep." Her words dripped with condescension. I smiled politely, stirring my tea. "I am glad you're enjoying yourself." Her eyes lingered on me too long, narrowing slightly. "You don't seem broken." "Not like I expected. Did Dad leave you something else after all?" I forced a soft laugh. "He left me memories. That's enough." But the suspicion never left her gaze. 2 nights later, I returned from the grocery store to find the upstairs hallway light on. My pulse spiked. I crept up the stairs, each creak of the wood slicing through the silence. When I reached my bedroom door, I froze. Rebecca knelt beside my dresser, rifling through drawers, her hands digging under scarves and folded sweaters. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked like a whip. She jumped, spinning around, her face flushing crimson. I was just looking for an old photo album," she stammered. "That's my private room," I snapped, my tone sharper than ID ever used with her. "You will not search it again." For a heartbeat, something hard flickered in her eyes, resentment, even hatred, before she brushed past me, muttering an excuse. The smell of her perfume lingered in the air like smoke long after she left. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching Charles' journal, the pages whispering with his words. Our children no longer saw me as a grieving widow. They sensed something they could not name, and it unsettled them. Days later, I discovered the cedar trunk in my closet had been pried open. Blankets tossed aside. The lock splintered. My hands shook as I pulled out the contents. The decoy binders were gone, old notebooks and empty folders I had placed there on instinct. But beneath the false bottom Charles had built years ago, the real documents lay untouched. A ragged laugh escaped me. They thought they had found the prize, but all they had stolen were scraps. The following week, a knock came at the door just after dusk. It wasn't the sharp, entitled pounding of Michael or the shrill tapping of Rebecca. This knock was hesitant, almost apologetic. When I opened it, my grandson Daniel stood there, tall and awkward in his growing frame. He wore a gray hoodie pulled low, his sneakers damp from the evening mist, his eyes soft brown, so much like Charles met mine with hesitation. "Grandma," he whispered. "Can I come in?" My throat tightened. I stepped aside, letting him slip into the living room. He sank onto the couch, shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep into his pockets. For a moment, he didn't speak. The only sound was the faint hum of traffic from Colorado Boulevard. "They're fighting again," he said finally. "Mom and Dad. About money. About you. It's all they ever talk about now." His voice cracked on the last word, his jaw tightening as if ashamed of the emotion. I sat beside him, close enough that the distance between us dissolved. "I know," I said softly. "I hear it in their eyes when they look at me. Daniel pulled something from his pocket, a crumpled piece of paper. He unfolded it slowly, smoothing the wrinkles. They say you're hiding things. That Grandpa left you something bigger. Is it true? The question pierced me. But there was no greed in his voice. No hunger like his parents. There was only fear and a quiet plea for truth. I reached for Charles' journal resting on the side table. Slowly, I flipped to a page marked with his careful hand and placed it in Daniel's lap. He read silently, lips moving slightly. If even one soul remains uncorrupted, then our legacy is safe. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. He meant me, didn't he? My own tears stung, but I held them back. He meant anyone who could remember what mattered. And I believe that's you. Daniel swallowed hard, then reached out, his hand trembling as it found mine. Then let me help you. Grandma, please. You can't fight them alone. His words broke something in me, a dam of isolation I hadn't realized I had built. For the first time since Charles' death, I felt warmth flicker in my chest. All right, I whispered. Well, face this together. His fingers tightened around mine, a silent promise. In that moment, I knew Charles' faith had not been misplaced. Amid greed and betrayal, one soul had stayed true. And with Daniel by my side, the game my children thought they were winning had just changed. It was Daniel who came to me first, his face pale under the porch light, his hoodie damp from a sudden Los Angeles drizzle. He didn't even sit down before blurting it out. Grandma, they're planning something, he said, breathless. I heard them in the kitchen after dinner. They think you're hiding money. They want to take you to court. My stomach clenched. What did they say? He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. I recorded it. You need to hear this. His thumb pressed play, and their voices spilled into my quiet living room. Rebecca's voice rang sharp and certain. She's too old to handle anything. If we take her to court, the judge will see she's incompetent. Well, get control of everything. Michael laughed, cold and careless. By the time we're finished, Shell'll be sitting in a home in Glendale, and we'll be sitting on her fortune. The recording ended, but the words hung in the air like poison. I gripped the armrest, my knuckles white. They weren't just mocking me anymore. They were plotting to erase me. Daniel's hands shook as he lowered the phone. They mean it. Grandma, you can't face them alone. I took a long breath, forcing calm into my voice. You've done the right thing by bringing this to me. Your grandfather prepared for this. The next morning, I drove downtown, past the endless sprawl of freeways, until the glass towers of Wilshire reflected the sun. Mr. Harris, my attorney, greeted me in his paneled office, his lined face grave as I relayed what Daniel had uncovered. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. Charles feared this might happen. That is why he created safeguards. The inheritance your children received is not what it appears to be. I frowned. What do you mean? He opened a locked drawer and slid a folder across the desk. Their $9 million is tied to hidden debts, back taxes, liabilities, and penalties. Dormant, unless they attempt to seize what belongs to you. If they challenge you in court, they trigger everything. The fortune they think is theirs will collapse. For a moment, I could not breathe. So their greed becomes their own undoing. Harris nodded. Exactly. But you must be prepared. Desperation can make them reckless. I pressed my hand over Charles' journal tucked in my purse. His words pulsed through me. Give yourself the power. Decide what comes next. When I left Harris' office, the Los Angeles sky had turned sharp blue. The city roared with traffic, horns and sirens blaring, but I walked with a strange calm. My children thought they were building a case against me. They didn't know they were walking straight into their father's trap. The Stanley Mosque Courthouse in downtown Los Angeles loomed ahead, its white stone facade towering against the cloudless sky. I walked through the heavy doors with my head high, though inside my chest my heart pounded. Beside me, Mr. Harris carried a thick leather briefcase. Behind me, Daniel kept close, silent but steady. Across the aisle, my children waited. Rebecca sat perfectly composed in a designer suit, her lips painted in a defiant smile. Michael lounged back with smug ease, his lawyer whispering in his ear. They didn't look at me. They didn't need to. In their minds, they had already won. The judge entered, a stern woman with sharp eyes that cut across the room. She called the case to order, and Rebecca's attorney rose first. His voice was smooth, rehearsed. Your Honor, my clients are here today because their mother, a woman in declining health, is no longer capable of managing her affairs. We believe she has been concealing assets left by her late husband for her own well-being. We request guardianship be transferred to her children. Rebecca dabbed at an imaginary tear. Michael nodded solemnly, a mask of concern painted across his face. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. When it was our turn, Mr. Harris stood, adjusting his glasses. His voice was calm but firm. Your Honor, what we have here is not incompetence. What we have is greed. A ripple of whispers spread across the gallery. Harris opened his briefcase and withdrew a folder bound in Charles' familiar handwriting. He placed it on the bench before the judge. Before his death, Charles Whitfield anticipated this very scenario. He created trusts and filings that reveal the truth of his children's inheritance. The $9 million they boast about is not free wealth. It is burdened with debts, unpaid taxes, and legal liabilities. Liabilities that remain dormant unless they challenge their mother. Rebecca's lawyer sputtered. That's impossible. The judge raised an eyebrow, flipping through the documents, her expression tightening as she read. It is not only possible, Harris continued, it is binding. By bringing this case today, the petitioners have triggered those very clauses. Their fortune is no longer protected. They have, in effect, undone themselves. Michael surged to his feet. This is a trick. Order, the judge snapped, slamming her gavel. The courtroom hushed. At last, the judge closed the folder with a decisive thud. The court finds no evidence of incompetence. Petition denied. Furthermore, the petitioners are strongly advised to consult financial counsel immediately. The obligations attached to their inheritance are considerable. I rose slowly, leaning on the table for balance, and allowed myself the faintest smile. Charles' trap had sprung. Their arrogance had led them straight into ruin. It began slowly, like hairline cracks spreading across glass. First came the frozen accounts, then the repossession notices. Within weeks, the glittering world my children had built on their father's money collapsed. Michael was the first to feel the weight. His yacht, barely a month old and moored in Marina del Rey, was seized before he could even take it out to sea. He stormed to my doorstep the next morning, his face red with rage. "This is your doing," he shouted, pounding the hood of his car. "You ruined me." I watched from behind the curtain, silent, the way Charles might have. His fury deflated when no one answered the door. He left, tires screeching, but his power had already turned to dust. Rebecca's fall was quieter, but no less brutal. Creditors swarmed. Her Malibu vacation home slipped into foreclosure before she could even furnish it. One afternoon, I saw her sitting in her car outside my house, her face buried in her hands. For a fleeting moment, I almost went to her. Almost, But Charles' words came back to me. They must reap what they sow. Meanwhile, inside my Pasadena villa, life slowly transformed. Daniel stayed often. His presence steady and kind. We filled the house with ordinary joys, baking loaves of bread, tending the wild roses in the garden, laughing over crossword puzzles and novels. The silence that had once haunted these rooms now hummed with warmth. One night, long after Daniel had gone to bed, a frantic knock pulled me from my chair. When I opened the door, Rebecca stood there. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes swollen from crying. "Mother," she whispered, her voice raw. "Please, please let me in." I stepped aside. She collapsed at the kitchen table, trembling as she spoke. They took everything. The cars, the house, even the furniture. I've been sleeping in motels, eating out of vending machines. I didn't know where else to go. Her words cut deep. Beneath the ruin, I saw the child. She had once been the girl who had clung to my hand on her first day of school. I ladled soup into a bowl, set it before her with a slice of bread. "You can stay tonight," I said softly. "You'll be safe here." She wept, but I kept my gaze steady. Mercy was one thing. Trust was another, that she had lost long ago. Days later, with Mr. Harris present, I signed a new will. To Rebecca and Michael, I left photographs and keepsakes, mementos of what they had once been. To Daniel, I left everything else. The house, the trust, the legacy Charles and I had built. As I pressed the pen to paper, my hand no longer trembled. I had chosen not out of anger, but of clarity. That evening, I sat on the porch, the sun bleeding gold across the Los Angeles skyline. Daniel raked the garden, humming softly. I held Charles' journal in my lap, whispering into the twilight. One soul remained. My love, our legacy is safe. In the end, I learned that wealth is not measured in money, nor in the glittering things that can be repossessed overnight. True wealth is measured in love, loyalty, and the courage to stand when others want you broken. My children's greed stripped away the illusion I had clung to for years, showing me who they truly were. But it also revealed something greater, that even in a family torn apart, one heart can remain pure, and one bond can carry forward a legacy of truth. Charles trusted me to protect what we built, and now I have passed that trust to Daniel. What was once a house filled with silence is now a home again, filled with laughter, honesty, and peace.